Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar presentation on the October 2024 Visa Bulletin. And we're going to spend some time trying to understand what the bulletin tells us for the short term, the medium term, and looking forward across into 2025. Again, my name is Ron Hoppy. I'm the CEO of Worldwide Health Staff Solutions, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Hammond. Mike is a colleague and a friend and one of the leading healthcare immigration attorneys in America. Mike has been very, very close to the Visa Bulletin and this issue for as many years or even more than we have here at Worldwide Health Staff. So it's always an honor and a pleasure to have Mike join us. Before we jump in to our topic for today, as always, I'm going to ask if you would be so kind and in the chat section of your screen, if you could just drop us a quick note letting us know where you are joining us from, what country that you have connected from. We always appreciate seeing that information. As we go through our presentation today, we also want to be able to respond to your questions. And we find the most effective way of doing that is if you would, as we go through our presentation, enter your questions in the chat section of the screen. One of our colleagues is monitoring the questions and will help us moderate our Q&A session towards the end of our presentation time today. So thank you to those of you that are already chiming in. It's great to see we've got individuals joining us from Jamaica, Nepal, England, Singapore, Philippines, and others, Kenya. So welcome to all. I hope that you will find the information today not only interesting, but helpful to you. Regardless whether you are just considering getting started on your immigration journey to the U.S., or if that journey has started and you are somewhere along that path towards becoming a permanent resident here in the United States. So with that being said, we're going to dive right in. Everybody was anxiously awaiting the October 2024 Visa Bulletin. It was published, I believe, exactly 1 week ago today. And CJ, if we could go to the next slide, please. I want to just share this bit of information before I more formally welcome Mike and we jump into our topic, because I think whenever we're talking about a big issue like the Visa Bulletin, visa processing times, it's always helpful to have a bigger picture perspective. It's often very easy, or it's human nature, to get focused on what the circumstances are today. But when we're talking about something like the Visa Bulletin and visa processing times, they are very fluid. They can change from month to month. So the information that we share about processing times today could be different next month, almost certainly will be different 3, 4, 5 months from now. So just to give all of you a bit of a bigger picture perspective on where we're at today. So this graph gives a 10-year look back on what the typical processing times have been going back to somewhere around 2014. You can see on the right-hand side of the chart, we have a red line denoting 12 months of processing time, and we have another red line denoting 24 months. And you can see in that 2022-2023 period, there's a whole bunch of bars that come up right against the 12-month red line. During this time, the Visa Bulletin was actually current, right? So you would say if it's current, processing time should be 0 months, but we know that's not the case. So even when the priority dates were current, we were seeing somewhere between 9 to 12 months for processing times. Most recently, as of the September Visa Bulletin, processing times had gotten all the way up to 42 months. And now with the current Visa Bulletin that will come into force on October 1, you can see we're back within that 12 to 24 months processing time frame, barely, but we're back within it. So just as we delve into our discussion, I wanted to just share that perspective with you. It's my pleasure again to introduce Mike Hammond. Mike has been practicing healthcare immigration law for a minute or two. I'll let Mike speak to exactly how many years. But Mike, welcome. Thanks as always for joining us. I know that our guests always benefit from your insights and your comments. So thanks for joining us today. And CJ, if we could go to the next slide. Mike, if you could just take a moment, say hello, and then just walk through what the October Visa Bulletin told us.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. I used to, I think it's appropriate at my age to lie about how long I've been practicing law. But it's been more than a year or two. So the October Visa Bulletin, I was one of the individuals that was just like you, very excited. It's like Christmas, open up the presents and we got socks. And you need socks, but, it's not the most exciting. The good news is that the bulletin last year had gotten us all the way through November 22nd of 2022. That's as far as it got. And then it retrogressed all through the summer, as the chart Ron showed earlier. We got what we call summer retrogression and significant backlog. And with the October bulletin, we basically got all the way, except for a week, back to where we were. Okay. So that's encouraging. That means that they do not believe they have a significant number of individuals who were interviewed back in the summer, who had 221Gs and then got held up and they're still waiting, or people in the 485s here in the U.S. who got held up. So that's pretty good that we at least got back to November 15th. Not as far as I wanted, not as far as I was predicting. I was certainly much more optimistic. It's not part of my nature to be optimistic, but when it comes to bulletins, I'm always optimistic. The other thing that I think is important with this Visa Bulletin is the chart that we're showing right here is the final action date chart. That means if you are overseas, you can be adjudicated. You can have your interview, you can get a visa stamp, you've got a green card basically, and then you can enter the U.S. Okay. If you're in the U.S. and you have a 485 filed, this means that they can work on your case and actually approve your case. So for those of you who've been waiting for interviews or waiting for your 485, this is good news. The other part of the Visa Bulletin that came out is the date for filing chart. And that moved from February 1st, 2023 to March 1st, 2023. And we're going to talk in a little bit when we talk about projections as to how that impacts things.
Okay, that's great, Mike. Could you also just briefly comment on what happened or didn't happen in the other workers category? And I think in our context, other workers category would be those who are looking to enter the U.S. as nurse aides or some other nursing support type of role.
Yeah. Basically, the other worker category had consistently had short lines up until a couple of years ago. And then due to a variety of demand for unskilled labor, it's called unskilled, but it's not necessarily unskilled, from truck drivers to individuals working in factories to technicians in the healthcare space. It would be like CNAs, rad techs, etc. There was just a huge number of individuals who got all put into that category. And there's a limit to that category per year, a maximum number. And the demand just completely swamped it. I do not anticipate significant movement in the other worker category. I would predict the other worker category right now at a 5+ year wait.
So somewhat optimistic news on the nursing front. Unfortunately, no optimistic news in the other worker categories. Would that be a good summary, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing to keep in mind, let's say you were a CNA, you went through the perm process, you got an I-140 approved, and now you have a priority date. Maybe you want to look at, can you further your education and go to nursing school and take the NCLEX and then get sponsored in the EB3 category, and then you retain your old priority date, which means you're further along in the line than someone else would be.
Good. All right. CJ, next slide, please. I've inserted this slide. I'm going to speak to this for just a moment. It may actually look to be a little bit out of place when we're talking about retrogression. But again, I want to speak to this issue of new domestic RNs in the US, again, just in the interest of providing a bigger perspective and some additional context for all of our international nurse guests. And, you know, when we talk about the immigration journey to the US, I think processing times is always the number one question. And the number two question is, do I need to have experience, and how much experience do I need to have? I just want to comment here real quickly. Here's a quick visual representation of what's been happening in the US the last 6 years in terms of the number of new registered nursing graduates in the United States. You can see that this number has been progressively increasing, not substantially, but it's been increasing year over year. Where last year the United States had an all-time record number of new domestic RN graduates who passed the NCLEX exam. U.S. healthcare employers do not have any issue or any real significant challenge in hiring new graduates or nurses without experience. In fact, some employers have an abundance of new graduates. They're turning some new graduates away. So this is just to give you some perspective. When we talk about needing to have a minimum of 2 years experience, having to have current and ongoing experience, that's where the big gap in the U.S. is. That is what U.S. employers are looking for. So again, as you consider processing times and just, you know, what your journey might look like, just to emphasize once again the importance of experience and the importance of current and ongoing experience. All right, back to our visa processing times and retrogression discussion. CJ, if we could go to the next slide, please. So, Mike, I think this is probably the part of the conversation that most of our guests are looking forward to gaining some further insights in. So let's take these kind of one at a time. What are your thoughts on what we might expect to see happen in the Visa Bulletin from October to December of 2024?
Okay, so let's look at it from a big picture perspective first. As I mentioned earlier, the date for filing chart had moved to March 1st, 2023. Generally speaking, the idea is that the Department of State sets that date to predict where they will be able to get through the year. So with the final action date chart. So the date for filing chart starts in the future. The date for filing chart then slowly throughout the year goes up to meet it. Okay. So if we look at it that way, and historically that's been fairly accurate, we're only looking at a movement of about 4 months. We've got the rest of November, all of December, January, February. That's it. That's all we're expecting to move. The Department of State likes to spread things out. So if they spread, matter of fact, last year, multiple times during the Visa Bulletin, they talked about this quarterly approach. Now, they didn't have any reference to it this time. So whether that means they've dropped it or they just didn't think it was appropriate to bring it up, I have no idea. And it certainly was not an official policy. But if you look at it, what we all know is that historically, come summer, May, June, July, etc., the bulletin retrogresses or stays the same. So all movement can be expected in these first 6 months of the year, maybe 7 months of the year. And if we're going to move 5 months or 4 months forward, we're going to get a month or two movement in October, December, month or two movement January to March, maybe a little bit in the spring, and then we're going to be done. So that is my prediction.
Okay, so we have the October Visa Bulletin. We've seen it. If my memory serves me correctly, Mike, when we received the Visa Bulletin last year in October, those dates improved from September. And then I think in the November Bulletin, we saw a little further improvement even from October. So if I understood correctly what you said, we can expect that in November, December, that the priority date may move up a month, 2, maybe even 3 months. Would that be accurate?
I don't think 3 months, because I think they're going to want to spread it out more. But I think it could easily move a month. I think by the end of the year, we will be in 2023.
Okay, into 2023. And then January to March, so kind of the next quarter,
we're going to have
starting off into 2025, just specifically in that time frame, a couple more months progress possibly?
Yeah, because I think we're only going to get 4.5 months for the year.
Okay. And then April to September, we're getting into that summertime. And just to recap, that's generally the time of year where we see progress in the Visa Bulletin either slowing, stopping, or even backing up. Is that a fair characterization?
It is. And I think it's important to understand why. The Visa Bulletin, the entire U.S. system of working with the Visa Bulletin, works on a use it or lose it method. So let's just make this up. Let's pretend there's only 100 green cards given out per year. If the year starts October 1st, ends on September 30th. If on September 30th, we've only given out 90 out of the 100, those other 10 are wasted. So it's in the best interest of all of us, the U.S. government, everybody on this call, to give out as many as possible so there's no waste at the end of the year. They've done a good job with that the last 2 years. Frankly, they've done some horrible job of it, losing as much as 100,000 visas only about 4 years ago. So we want them to use them all up. So whether they use them all up in first quarter or second quarter or third quarter, it may seem like it's negative because you're like, oh, in the summer it never moves, it even went backwards. But all that is an indication that the system worked efficiently and that they had used up all the numbers. As a matter of fact, this year they even announced about 3 weeks ago that for all of EB1, EB2, and EB3, they had exhausted every single visa they had available. So that's an efficient system. It looks bad in the summer, but it's a good thing.
Okay, fair enough. Mike, we're getting a number of questions from our guests asking questions around my priority date is such and such. My priority date is something else in 2023. When might I be current? So just to recap what we've been talking about here. So we have a current priority date as of the October Visa Bulletin. And let me just comment there for a second. That priority date isn't effective today, right? It becomes effective October the 1st.
Correct.
So for all of those who are inquiring now with a November 22 priority date, that priority date actually just comes into force on October 1st. But given the projection, Mike, of March 1st, 2023, what that's telling us, put another way, is for the duration of October 2024 to September 2025, the expectation today would be that the progress in the Visa Bulletin wouldn't go much beyond March of 2023. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So if you have a priority date that is May 2023, July 2023, September 2023, your plans should be focused around, it's probably going to be sometime around maybe this time in 2025, 2020, October 25, Visa Bulletin, where we might get much closer to your date being current. Now, Mike, this is the October Bulletin. This is kind of the projection. What's the likelihood that this could improve in some way as we get into the year? Is that a possibility? Or
Yeah,
is that something that nobody should be hanging on to?
it is a possibility. I would not necessarily hang on to it. Where we have tended to have gotten improvements in the past is if the Department of State has miscalculated. If the USCIS slows down its processing of 485s, which then means the Department of State and the consulates can have more individuals. So, for example, if the USCIS decided to do interviews in every 485, that would slow down the processing here in the US, which would mean the consulates would have more of a chance. So we could see that. And then obviously there's legislative things and things along those natures. But generally speaking, the Visa Bulletin moving forward has been a function of miscalculations or a change in processing times at the USCIS. Generally speaking, you're going to have attrition. You're going to have some people who drop out, who are, for example, right now, let's say you are married and your spouse also has an EB3 case. That case is getting counted twice, right? You and your spouse is getting counted as two, and your spouse's case, you're getting counted as two. If you've got kids, 2 kids, you're getting counted as 8 instead of what is reality 4. So we see some of that, but they've gotten better over the years at being able to adjust for that. So that's not as big of a deal as it used to be.
Yeah. Mike, you mentioned something I think that is also relevant, at least to some degree, and that is regulatory or legislative changes that could impact this. I'm pretty certain that most of our guests joining us today would have heard of something called the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act. I know there's a big push by groups like the American Hospital Association, the International Recruitment Providers, other significant voices in the healthcare space looking to advocate for something like the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act. In the last couple of weeks, I myself have had the opportunity of speaking directly with a couple of U.S. senators and a couple of U.S. congressmen. I'll spare everybody sort of the summary of those discussions. But Mike, we're coming up to an election here in the U.S. In November. We've done webinars before about what the impact of the election is likely to be on immigration policy, and in summary, I don't think it's going to be significant one way or the other, at least as it relates to EB3s. Just your thoughts on the prospects of something like Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act or other efforts, and maybe just take a brief moment for those that may not know what the scope of that is. Just give a high-level overview of what that proposed legislation is trying to do.
Yeah, basically most legislative efforts over the last several years have been to pull certain occupations out of getting counted against the quota. It has been determined that it is not politically palatable to add numbers to the quota. So if we can pull numbers out of the quota and not count them, it does the same thing. So most legislative bills have looked at pulling RNs out, pulling certain doctors out, pulling certain other healthcare professionals out. Just like in other occupations, they're looking to pull others out of for STEM occupations. There's 2 times coming up in the next few months where we may have an opportunity. At the end of the year, well, first of all, let me back up just for a second. Generally speaking, standalone immigration bills that would be so narrow as to be like the Healthcare Worker Resiliency Act don't move forward by themselves. They get attached to something else. So, for example, a year ago, when the border bill was very, very close, there was a vehicle being used to attach something similar to the border bill, and then that was killed. If the border bill comes back up again now, during the last debate, Vice President Harris indicated that she would be willing to sign the Republican version of the border bill if she's elected. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But a border bill would be a possibility of getting a healthcare legislation passed. And then at the end of the year, you always have what are called must-pass legislation. They generally deal with funding. They generally deal with a military and a variety of other things. And they call this the lame duck session after the election, before the new Congress is sworn in. And there's always an opportunity there to try to get something pushed through. So there will be some pushes. It'll likely all be done behind the scenes. The less publicity is usually better. But we certainly, we're not optimistic, but we at least are, we at least be there. We'll say there's opportunities. Let's put it that way.
Well said. Well said. Very good. CJ, if we could go to the next slide, please. So given the information that Mike's been able to share, where we're at with the Visa Bulletin for both EB3 nurses as well as nurse aides, and kind of what the projections are based on the information we have today, I want to just share a couple thoughts on what your personal strategy should be if your ultimate goal is to live and work in the United States. And while the processing times are too long for everyone, for all concerned, I think it's important to understand that the U.S. immigration system operates on a first in, first out basis. Essentially, that means a petition that is filed on your behalf by an employer today, in practical terms, should get through the process and receive a visa sooner than a petition that would be filed for you 30 days from now, or 60 or 90 days from now. So the first thing to bear in mind is first in, first out. You don't have to worry about, you don't need to have the fear of missing out. There is no right time. There is no perfect time to initiate your immigration journey other than today. The sooner you are able to have a petition filed on your behalf, the sooner you should get to the front of the line to have a visa issued to you. So we get a lot of questions about, is this a good time to apply, to start my application? Should I wait till the date gets current? We get many of those types of questions. And I just want to assure everyone and to hopefully give you the confidence in knowing that, yes, the processing times are important and we need to plan for our futures. But really, the most important thing is getting an application started if you haven't already done so. Waiting for the priority dates to become more current or to become current altogether is not going to ultimately help you in your goal of arriving in the U.S. Mike, anything to add to that, or do you see it differently?
No, I see it absolutely like that. We can only control what we can control. We can control when we file. We can control when we passed our exams. We can control when we've done our English exams. All those things that are under our control, the Visa Bulletin is not. And I think it's important to note that this is a matter of timing. It's not a matter of will I get there? You will get here. It's a matter of when you will get here. And although we would all love for it to be faster, the reality is it's not. That could change. But for now, we just control what we can control and take our action.
Yeah, okay, appreciate that. And for those of you that do have an application currently in process, whether it's just been recently filed or whether it's approved or whether you've gotten to the NVC stage or perhaps you're even documentarily qualified, CJ, if we can go to the next slide. The best advice that we can offer to those of you that have applications in process and try to encourage you as you wait for the process to be completed is to share with you a quote from a former U.S. President, Calvin Coolidge. Mike, just as an aside, I just learned recently President Coolidge actually attended a small college just outside of Charlotte that I drive by every day. And coincidentally, it's the same college from which Steph Curry graduated.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah, a semi-useless factoid, but
That's good
just thought I'd throw that in. But former President Calvin Coolidge had this quote. He said, "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb." Mike, I think you and I can maybe relate just a little bit to that. Maybe. Education will not. The world is full of educated failures. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. So the message to each of you that has an application in process is be persistent, keep your determination. As we've been talking about, the question isn't, will you get a visa? Will you arrive? The only question is when. And there's nothing that you can do to make the process go faster at this stage other than to remain persistent and to remain resolute in your determination to see this process through to the end. So hopefully that provides those of you that are in process and waiting with some encouragement. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And I can certainly speak to the fact that in the work that we've done over these many years, persistence is probably one of the keys that has allowed us to be where we're at today. In addition to this, CJ, if we could get to the next slide, please. Mike, I know you always provide, great advice and direction to candidates on things that they can be doing practically while they're waiting. So if I could ask you just to comment sort of, on this in the meantime period, right? Here I am waiting. In the meantime, what can I be doing as an applicant to put myself in the best possible position?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. There's a couple listed right here. Make sure you've got your a valid English language score so that you can get the visa screen. Valid visa screen. Visa screens are good for 5 years. Keeping up your bedside, your clinical skills. And I think with the weights that we have right now, it opens up some other questions as to what do I do for overseas assignments? If I'm in the Philippines, do I, and I'm currently working in Australia, do I re-up? Do I re-up if they want me to go for 1.5 years, but my priority date is 2024? And how does that timing work? And I would encourage you to reach out to your account rep there at Worldwide to talk to them about your opportunities, because my impression from my hospital clients is that clinical skills is key. And if you can be in a position where you're doing some bedside work as opposed to working for an insurance company or part-time somewhere, that's going to rule out over the uncertainty of the visa dates. So there are some questions that you want to ask as a result of this, the length of time retrogression is right now. But I think those are some key things.
Excellent. And again, I shared that slide earlier about the number of new grads in the U.S. kind of as a setup for this slide. Again, speaking on the importance of clinical skills and clinical experience. This is what U.S. healthcare employers are primarily looking for today when they're making the decision to invest in your future and to invest in international recruitment overall. Thank you for the many questions that have been coming in. I know CJ has been very busy keeping track of them. We'll get to those in just a moment. But just before we do, if we could move on one more slide. Just again, we want to share information with you. We want to provide accurate and information in a way that that is understandable and in a way you can use. And in doing that, we also want to collectively provide you with the encouragement that you need to go through this very lengthy process. And just as a closing thought before we get into our Q&A session here in just a moment, it's important that whether whatever your circumstances are, but particularly as it relates to your immigration journey, to remain hopeful, right? Mike can't tell you what the processing dates are going to be 3 and 6 months from now. I can't tell you. Nobody can tell you. And if somebody pretends to be telling you, they're either delusional or in some other way detached from reality. And those people do exist, by the way. But be hopeful in uncertain times. And in order to be hopeful, it's from experience, it's very, very helpful to take some time every day and remember what it is that you are thankful for. We all have many things to be thankful for, and just spending a moment reflecting on those can be a big encouragement to us each and every day. Focus on what you can look forward to. You have a lot. As an international healthcare provider, you have a lot to look forward to. So try and focus on that as opposed to what the delay of the moment might be. And then whether it's regarding your immigration journey or just life generally, it's always helpful to surround yourself with people that have the glass is half full mentality, a positive view of things, as opposed to those that see the problem in every circumstance. So lots of reasons to remain hopeful. Hopefully you can practice some of these tips each and every day as you continue through your immigration journey. So with that, CJ, I'm going to ask you to jump in and start taking us through some of our questions. As we do so, you can see here also on this slide, there's a link where if you are just looking to start your immigration journey, you can connect live with one of our recruiters just by clicking on that link. We have recruiters standing by who will be happy to hear from you and be happy to provide you with the information that you need. So CJ, over to you for our first question today.
All right, thanks, Ron. So we have a question from RK, and he said, do we still think the timeline is 18 to 20 months? Currently, it's 22 months and the filing date predicting 3 months movement for this year. Is it still 18 to 22 month wait?
Yeah, I would say it's not. I would say right now we're in the 2.5 year. If I am looking what's going to look like in the middle of 2025. Now, for someone who is current now and going to have their interview this coming quarter, sometime in October, November, December, for them, it's going to end up being a little less than 2 years. They have priority dates of November. 2022. They're going to get interviewed in October, November, December. They're going to be right at the 2-year mark, maybe even a little less. But I think as the year goes on, we're going to be closer to 2.5 rather than 18 to 2. That's my take.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to, I would agree with that, Mike. And I think I'll just emphasize for those that have a priority date prior to of March 2023 or prior, you're likely to fall into this time frame. And if you have a priority date that's currently ahead of March of 2023, it's likely going to be a bit longer than this. But again, we watch the Visa Bulletin from month to month for a reason. So if you have a priority date of March 2023 or sooner, you can expect to be in this time frame that is mentioned here. And beyond that, it could extend out further, and we'll see that as time goes on. Next question, CJ.
All right. Next question is from Abigail. Why didn't the filing date move more after 1 year? Only 1 month. Will it not move again like last year?
Yeah,
Mike,
I mean,
this
go
is the
ahead.
skilled worker, right? I think this relates to the unskilled worker or the other worker category. Mike,
yeah, I
can you
think so.
comment on this?
Yeah, I think the question relates to the other worker category.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because obviously the EB3 moved almost 2 years.
Mm.
But I think the reality is it's all a supply and demand. There's more people in the funnel, more people in the pipeline than what we have allocated visas. And so as long as there's continued more people go in, then we're going to continue to have longer waits. And I think that is what had happened in the other worker category.
Okay, cool. This one, the question is, how will the Visa Bulletin move this new fiscal year? Do you have any insights?
Yes, please listen to the recording of this presentation. This is really what we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes. Not to avoid the question, but we've commented at length that we, currently best projection is that for EB3 registered nurses, the Visa Bulletin over the next 12 months may move forward as far as March 2023. That's the projection. And as is the case with all projections, they're almost never 100% correct. So, we'll be commenting on further Visa Bulletins as they come out. But based on what we see today, the projection is in the coming year that the dates may move up as far as March 2023.
Okay. Next question is from Miss K. Why is the process going to take longer year comparing to last year?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of keep in mind we had additional allocations the last several years as a result of COVID, where we got numbers beyond their normal 140,000, which created an artificial feeling of things were current. Once that went away, then we went back to normal. I think that was our aberration. This is back to normal.
Okay. CJ, next question, please.
All right. And like some of the questions here, like they're providing their priority date. And like, for example, from Leonardo, my PD is August 2023. Will it be current next year? Like a lot of questions like this in the chat.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I don't think so. If it does, it'll be next October. So I think it's unlikely that August 2023 will be current this coming fiscal year. I'd like to say yes, and things could change, but if I were betting today, I would not bet on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, the projection is that in the current period of October 24 to September 25, that we're expecting based on the information we have today for the Visa Bulletin to advance to March 2023?
Okay. And this is like a good question from Chen. My priority date is November 1st of 2022, DQ February 22 of 2023, and currently in Abu Dhabi. Is there any chance to receive ID this October, or do I need to change my embassy?
Like,
Well-
this is a hot question, one that comes in a lot. Thoughts on this?
Yeah. So first of all, if you became current in October, and that's the first time you've been current and you haven't had an interview yet, I would not expect you to get an interview in October. Because I think in October, they're going to spend their time taking care and wrapping up those cases that had interviews back in the summer that then retrogressed that they could not complete. So I think you're more likely to have an interview sometime, I would predict, by the end of the year. So within the first quarter. Throwing in Abu Dhabi throws a whole wrench into it, because that is a consulate that is having significant delays and issues. And the question of should I change to another embassy is something you need to talk to your case manager and attorney on, because while it is possible to change embassies, it doesn't always go smoothly. Now, Abu Dhabi is someone that I would be maybe leaning toward changing, simply because of what they've been doing in the last year. But it's a very specific, and it relates specifically to you. Like, for example, how flexible are you to travel? Are you, and I assume you're working in Abu Dhabi, so if there's an interview scheduled for you 3 weeks from now in Manila, can you actually travel fast enough to get to the Philippines in 3 weeks? So there's some practical family questions for you, but definitely talk to your case manager. And the right answer for you might not be the right answer for the next person with the exact fact pattern.
Very well said. Thank you, Mike. CJ, let's take a couple more. Next question, please.
Okay, this one's from Ray. He said, if someone's priority date becomes current and he has complete requirements, can we confidently say that his visa will be issued, or there might be a reason which can hinder visa issuance?
I'll let you take that one. This is a loaded question.
Yeah, generally, things that can hinder visa issuance relate to medical exams. Something shows up in the medical exam that you didn't know about, a positive TB test, a variety of things. Criminal background that was maybe not quite disclosed or was not completely disclosed properly. Documents that may or may not have been the most accurate documents. So there are things that can hinder cases, but generally speaking, if there's no medical issues, no criminal history, and all your documents, your experience letters, your educational documents are all perfectly fine, then generally there's not anything that hinders it.
Okay, great. CJ, next.
Okay, last question is from all, like, how long does a country like Kuwait progress in EB3?
Can you repeat that question, please, CJ?
Sorry, how long does a country like Kuwait progress in EB3?
Mike?
Yeah, Kuwait has not been set aside like India, China, Philippines, Mexico. So Kuwait's in the what we call ROW, rest of the world category, or some people refer to it as all other chargeability. So if we went back to that very first column on the Visa Bulletin, Kuwait's in the first line. So you only look at the other lines if you are born in one of those other countries: China, India, Philippines, Mexico right now.
Okay. Ron, I have one more question. Should nurses be concerned about employers' abandonment because of the wait?
I think the answer from our experience, the answer to this question is registered nurses need not be concerned about abandonment because of the wait. On that chart I showed at the beginning of our presentation, I marked very specifically this 12 to 24 month processing time window. I think that is a time frame within which U.S. employers that decide to implement international as part of their strategy are quite comfortable with. So I would say, as it relates to registered nurses, as long as the priority dates don't get far beyond 24 months for an extended period of time, right? They've gotten beyond that for some months this summer. But I think as long as they don't get to this point for an extended period of time, U.S. healthcare employers are continued to have to deal with a shortage. That shortage is real. The shortage is focused on nurses that have that 2 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years of experience. That is where the most urgent needs are. And although the U.S. education system is producing more graduates than ever before, it's still not enough. It's still not enough. Now, if you have a nurse aid application, I think the concern there would be greater, simply because of the reality that when your application was started, it's likely that the priority dates were current or much closer to current. And given how far back the priority date has moved, it is a concern. But at least the employers that we're working with, they continue to have needs, urgent needs, for individuals to fill nurse aid positions. So we continue to work with them. We continue to work with those applicants. But I think this concern of abandonment for registered nurses, from our experience, is very, very low. Where I have seen a couple of cases of abandonment in our industry, it's generally at times where an employer will have new leadership that comes in either over their talent acquisition or their nursing department. And in those circumstances, we have seen very, very limited instances of abandonment. But the good news is, if you're a strong candidate and your application is approved and you are abandoned, in many ways, you become an even more compelling applicant for another employer that is actively engaged in international because of your pre-existing priority date. So I think this is not a huge area of concern for registered nurses. And if I was you, this wouldn't be on my top 10 list of things to be concerned about.
All right. I think that's all for our Q&A, Ron. And for those questions that we didn't get the chance to answer, please chat with our live recruiters, and they will be more than happy to answer any questions. And also, moving forward, please like and follow us on Facebook to keep updated for immigration updates and new positions. I'll also put the link on the chat. And another one would be our referral program. So refer a nurse with us, and you'll get and earn up to $250. I'll also put that on the link on the chat. Back to you,
CJ,
Ron.
let me just add real quick. Facebook and social media is also the best way to keep up to date on our upcoming webinar presentations. We have these presentations pretty much on a weekly basis on a wide variety of topics. So following us on social media is the best way to keep up with that. CJ, if you could move ahead and just share Mike's contact information as well. We're always grateful to have Mike join us. If you have any immigration needs and you're not currently associated with another attorney that's working on your case, Mike and his team are the very best in terms of where you're going to get accurate, real, meaningful answers to your questions in a way that you can understand and relate to. So feel free to reach out to him as well. Just for our guests that are joining us, just a personal note. Happy to share that in early October, I'll be visiting both Ghana and Kenya. I'm looking very much forward to that and meeting with some of our registered nurse candidates. And then later in the month of October, looking forward to visiting the Philippines again. And we'll be joining the Philippine Nurses Association annual meeting and some other events. So looking forward to that. Mike, thanks as always. Any closing thoughts or just comments you'd like to share before we conclude today?
I would just go back to the comment about staying the course, taking care of what you can take care of, and kind of hanging in there. And I think you will get there before you know it.
All right. Awesome. Mike, thank you. CJ, thank you. And thank you to everyone that joined us today. I hope that you have found this information to be helpful. I hope that it provides you with further clarity on your path, wherever stage in the process you may be at. We look forward to connecting with you again soon in an upcoming webinar presentation. And as always, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out to Mike. We'll look forward to connecting with you all again soon.